Hi, this is Les Posen, Fear of Flying clinical psychologist. Welcome to this little video. It's a follow-up to one I did previously, which many people seem to be enjoying or getting something out of, new ways to think about turbulence. In there I talked about how a model of a plane suspended in jelly may help people understand the forces at work on a plane in turbulence, and that the mantra that I offer, turbulence might be uncomfortable but it's not unsafe, is something you should bear in mind and perhaps write down somewhere and keep thinking about each time perhaps you go into your car and turn the engine on, walk through a doorway. Just keep reminding yourself of this main principle. Now, many patients come to see me already having worked out some way to manage themselves in turbulence, and one of the new things that people are using are apps to help them predict when turbulence might occur on a flight. There's a collection of these apps available on various app stores. The one I'm going to look at today comes on the Apple iOS store for both iPad and for iPhone. And it's useful up to a certain point. And there are several of these apps. And that was first shown to me by a patient who had been using it to help her manage her fear of flying with respect to turbulence. And she showed me this particular screenshot of the app, which I want to refer to you so you get an understanding of what this app is trying to do. And so you can see here a little map. It shows her starting point a few weeks ago, a location in Queensland in northern Australia, or the eastern part of Australia up the north, called the Gold Coast, and her 2-hour flight down to Melbourne. And you can see how the app uses predictions. It goes out to the published weather sources about what the weather will be like on this flight along this particular journey, and says there's a probability that this is the likelihood of turbulence appearing, but it also tries to quantify its intensity. And so underneath the little map, you'll see this chart. On the left-hand side, on what's called the y-axis, up and down, is intensity from light to strong. And on the right-hand side, which is time going across from the beginning of the flight to the end, you see these up and down little hills and valleys, which is the presence of turbulence according to that scale of light to strong. Underneath it, it says chance of turbulence. And we have a percentage. In this case, I think it's 61%. And I'm left with a question. What does 61% chance mean? Does it mean that there's a more than 50% chance that you will encounter turbulence on this flight? Or does it mean that about 61% of this flight will be spent in some turbulence? The map would suggest, or the little hills and valleys would suggest, a fair amount of turbulence will be experienced along the flight. So that's number one. How accurate are these apps? I actually tried this app out for myself a couple of weeks ago after my patient had shown it to me, and on a flight down and back from Launceston, and it predicted on the day that I flew 0 turbulence in and 0 turbulence out. Most unusual for Launceston, which is my chosen destination, because it's the one that I usually go with patients, because we're almost guaranteed to get turbulence. In this case, we didn't. Or I didn't. But there were some bumps along the way. And the question becomes, how is the patient going to interpret the bumps? Are they going to say, well, the app got it wrong? Or, more actually, are they going to say is, well, the level of bumpiness falls below the threshold that the app refers to as light or moderate turbulence? So this is one of the things that we don't know about with these apps. What do they mean by light? What do they mean by heavy? What do the graphs actually mean? It's open to patient interpretation. Now, when I ask my patient, well, now that you have this information, you have a probability that some measure of turbulence will occur on your flight, what do you do with that information? Well, I feel better about it. It helps me to prepare. When I went a little bit further, well, how does that happen? How does it help you to prepare? Well, it kind of puts my mind at ease that there won't be any surprises. So that's interesting. No surprises means I don't have to worry as much because I know what's going to happen. That's an interesting way of handling it. If we have a look at the app, we're going to scroll down from the App Store preview, and you'll see here a couple of refs or a couple of reviews. It gets quite high reviews, this app. If I click here, you'll see what it says. This app helped me with my flight anxiety. I'm a horrible flyer, one of the worst out there. It hasn't cured my anxiety. It's given me a peace of mind, feeling more prepared. Okay, there we go. Let's go on to this one. And there's a response from the developer, Carlos. Hi, I've been using this one from September. Hi, I've been using this app for a couple of years. Due to my fear of turbulence during a flight, it doesn't eliminate my fear. It does prepare me mentally for the flight I'm about to take. Not to mention when there's little to no turbulence forecasted, it does help put my mind at ease a bit. But what happens if it forecasts as it did for me with launch system, no turbulence, and yet there is significant bumps along the way, but falling below the threshold that this app picks up? Or maybe there's sufficient delay between when you went out to get the information on the app, and maybe 5 hours later, as weather can often do, there's been a change and you haven't upgraded or had another look. And you're sitting there comfortably thinking, oh, I'll be fine. And now we have these bumps. I want to suggest to you that the bottom line for all these apps is ultimately they ought to be unnecessary. Ultimately, you don't need to know if there's going to be turbulence on the route, or I should choose a particular aircraft type, or I shouldn't go on certain days, or if I look outside at the weather and I see clouds, I'm in real trouble all the way from Melbourne to Los Angeles. When in fact, your aircraft climbing out at 2,500 to 3,500 feet will be above that yucky looking weather in about 6 to 10 minutes, and you'll be in cruise altitude at 35,000 feet or 30,000 feet initial cruise altitude in say 25 minutes for the next 14 hours of your flight, say between Melbourne and Los Angeles. It doesn't follow you. There's different weather patterns. If you have a look at this diagram here, which is part of a Twitter feed that I participate in that looks at what pilots are thinking about weather. This was sent to a Twitter feed list by a German pilot for Lufthansa flying an A380 between Frankfurt and Hong Kong. And you can see on this map on the left-hand side there, the chosen route that the navigation department would have suggested is the best route for the flying on that day, given weather and other things that may be happening. All those little triangles are waypoints along the way. They all have 5-letter acronyms. They're all pronounceable, but they're actually not real points in most cases. They're imaginary points marked by a singular latitude and longitude in space, and that's the route that the plane will fly at. Slightly north of that line, by the way, is a jet stream, and the pilots are flying parallel to the jet stream. They may pick up a little bonus flying nearby and speed up a bit, and then the jet stream goes north. We want to try and avoid going across them if we can. Sometimes it's unavoidable, and try and avoid going the opposite direction because they will really slow us up and become quite bumpy. Not pleasant. So when pilots think about the level of turbulence along the way, they're putting this knowledge of weather to use. They're thinking about, will we require some extra fuel because we'll get headwinds? Will we perhaps have to divert around a local build-up in certain places along the route, monsoonal India, for instance, at certain times of the year, and we'll have to deviate right around that, which means we'll have to take on extra fuel to increase our endurance in the air. We may even have to offload some passengers and their baggage to lighten our weight. Fortunately, nowadays, with very modern aircraft, even the twin-engine ones, they have much greater endurance than even some of the older 4-engine 747s and A340s. So being bumped in that respect is going to be a thing of the past. Those new planes, by the way, are also much better equipped with their new wing structures to handle minor bumps. They can predict them ahead of time a little bit and soften it like a really good shock absorber in a car. So they use the prediction of turbulence or weather to be more accurate along the way. They may even say to cabin crew, look, about 4 hours out of Frankfurt, we may encounter a bit of a front, so try and get the initial meal service over and done with. I may have to warn you to sit down, but before that I'll give you plenty of notice to go around and check that everyone's seatbelt's on, but there may be a moment or two where you'll have to sit down and cease the food service or the meal service. And that's really important for cabin crew to know about. Okay? Make sure that people aren't walking around the cabin in turbulence. So the trouble with these apps is that people can use them as what we call in the trade safety behaviors, that if I can predict what's going to happen, then I'm better for it. Well, it's only going to be better for it if you know what to do in turbulence rather than worry for hours or days ahead of time. You don't want to get involved in safety or ritualistic behavior that says, I can't do this if these situations are present, because sooner or later those situations will be present. You will have to fly at 7 in the morning on a cloudy day because work demands it, or you have to be in a certain place at a certain time, and there's not much choice about it. So the mantra always has to be, 1, turbulence might be uncomfortable, it's not unsafe. 2, I have a plan for self-management should I encounter turbulence. The rest of the time, I just need to keep myself busy and focused and doing stuff rather than sitting there frozen in trepidation that I won't be able to handle turbulence. I want to have a look at this app very quickly, the one from Carlos. I have it on my iPhone, and I'll show you how this works and get an idea. It has its value. It comes up with this first page, which is great, flight number. So I'm going to put in one to launch system today. We'll put in JQ 742. Actually, it might be coming back from launch system. Search, let's see what it comes up with. And you can see here it's due to arrive at 5:30, due to leave at 5:30, and there's only a little bit of tiny turbulence forecast, 1% you can see, in coming back to Melbourne. I can go back and maybe put in the outbound flight and see what it says there, 741, and see what prediction we have for that one. So it's searching. So it's going to leave at 4:40, and again, slightly out of Melbourne, a little bit of a bump. So that's kind of cool. We'll cancel this. Notice that there's also this search random flight. So let's just put something in and see what it comes up with. Look at that, Tel Aviv to New York. Chance of turbulence 7%. Again, I don't know whether it means the likelihood of having turbulence is 7% or 7% of the duration of this flight will be spent in turbulence. I don't know what it really means. And so you can see there it's planning it out there. And in fact, you can save this for later on. It predicts about a day in advance. If we go down the bottom of the chart here, you'll see sensors. So if you actually pay to unlock these features, it's got these sensors. It's going into the phone's accelerometers. So if you turn the phone, you can see the plane in the middle one. This is roll. If you pitch it up, you can see the angle of pitch. And if you move the plane up and down, you can see the forces at work. The top one moving. So my strong suggestion, if you want to play with this stuff, is in the middle of a flight, put the tray down, let it sit on top, and just watch this. The cheaper way to do that is just to get a thing of water here, just a small cup of water, fill it up, leave it on the tray, and just watch what happens to the water, and you'll see it hardly ever leaves the cup. So again, your mantra has to be, turbulence might be uncomfortable, it's not unsafe, I have a plan to self-manage, to manage myself. And you want to keep practicing this every day. And when you go over bumps in your car, when you walk through doorways, when you get into elevators, wherever it might be, have this mantra ready. These apps are interesting and fun, but seriously, do not trust them to help you overcome your fear of flying, because they may well be perpetuating unnecessary apprehension. By the way, there are many other apps like this. This one from Sky Guru has been prepared by a commercial pilot with psychological qualifications. It's a much more in-depth app, lots more to be seen and read, and it really is part of a course to help people with fear of flying. I do have it, and I do think it's quite good, but it is expensive. One other useful point of having these apps for someone like me who's working with patients is that I can be on board an aircraft, make some sort of healthy predictions as to when turbulence will occur to myself, and therefore be a little bit more vigilant to be ready to help my patient when the time comes and we can expect some turbulence to occur during the flight. In a future video, what I'm going to do is show you some of the things that I do when I have patients. So I move this way, sit in my aeroplane seats, and we practice actually managing turbulence, and I throw turbulence at them in my virtual setup, and I'll show you how we deal with that. That's coming up in a future video, not too far away. So I hope you enjoyed this. Make some comments down below. I usually respond to them, and we'll talk more about this in the future. Bye for now.